All right, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another social emotional workshop. Today, we are going to be talking about child nutrition and picky eaters. We have Joe and Teresa back from Care of Southeastern Michigan. Thank you guys for joining us. Welcome back. We're so glad to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You can go ahead and get started.
Okay, well, today we are going to talk about picky eaters. But when I developed this PowerPoint, I wanted to speak about more than just that. The contact that I had at this one pregnancy center wanted like general nutrition and picky eaters, but I just felt like we actually needed to include a little bit more because, about 14 million kids are affected by obesity, and 14 million children and, adolescents. And I think that that's pretty surprising. That's a lot of kids. It seems to start when they're about 2 to 5 years old, when all that learning about food and forming relationships with food and, trying to figure out what you like, what you don't like comes around. And then it just seems like it gets worse into as they get older. And that could be for a lot of reasons. That could be because of technology and kids are sitting or laying around more. Could be that. Could also be that there's a lot of food struggles going around with kids. Could be that a lot of parents aren't really sure what to give their kids, how much to give their kids. And so, we're going to talk about a little bit more than just picky eaters. We're going to talk about those food struggles and how do you deal with them. Mostly we're talking about that first age group, 2 to 5 years old, because that's where all those relationships and ideas and thoughts about food and eating are getting formed. So we're going to talk about how to avoid those food struggles. We're going to talk about how much to give them, based on their age or what they like. Also about family structure and routine. How do we as a family, what's our environment around food and eating? And also just a tiny bit about physical activity, because that's all part of it. We don't get as much physical activity as we used to, us and our children. And so we have to figure out how to teach them about that to hopefully lessen that prevalence of childhood obesity and get them to think of differently about food. Because different generations have different ideas about food and how to eat and what to eat. And so that's kind of what I wanted to start off with. I'd like you guys to unmute yourself, or as you're thinking about this, maybe you could put your answer in the chat, and then Joe would be nice enough to read them for me. So I want you to think about your experiences with eating when you were growing up and what kind of memories you have and how does that affect your eating with your children. And so just as an example, my parents were born in the 1920s. And so they were children of the Depression. And there was food scarcity going around as they were growing up because of the world, Second World War II, as they became teenagers. And so my parents were, because of what was going on at the time, they were a low income family, and especially my mother's family, they were very poor, and they grew up in West Virginia, both parents, not too far from each other. And my mother's father he was a coal miner, but he also worked on farms occasionally. And they also had 10 kids. And so, there was food scarcity there. And as most people know, that Depression era, they were taught to be members of the Clean Your Plate Club. And so both of my parents were like that. You have to clean up your plate or you can't leave the table. And so that's my earliest memory, is sitting at the table for hours because I wouldn't eat something like peas. I hate peas, and to this day hate liver. I won't touch liver. And I sat for hours at the table unless one of my sisters, older sisters who happened to be washing the dishes, would come by and take my food, chunk the food off my plate and eat it so that I wouldn't have to sit there for hours, you know. And so that was my first memory of food. And also, it kind of did start to affect how I fed my kids, because I remember when I was a fluffy girl for a long time, to the point where it was unhealthy for me. And in the early 2000s, tried to change that. Started off with Weight Watchers, and so measuring food and counting thinking about what calories are and everything. I realized I was eating a good 500 extra calories a day because of that clean your plate stuff. So what are you guys' thoughts about, what are your memories of your childhood and how it affected you and your children's?
We have one in the chat, Teresa.
Okay.
It says, I never really had any issues with eating in the way my parents handled it. They let me try foods and decide for myself, and I am far from what anybody would consider picky.
Cool, good.
And another one, similar situation, had to clean my plate or else you didn't, I just lost the spot. You didn't get dessert. Money was scarce. I was very picky growing up and still consider myself to be. Unfortunately, I have grown though. I'll share mine. My father was really strict. He had to eat it or wear it. He was angry. We did not get off the table until we finished our food.
Yeah.
One more.
Oh,
Go ahead, Teresa.
I was gonna say, how did it affect Alex eating, your son Alex?
Well, I grew up in the restaurant business, my first job and stuff. So I was really open to trying anything. I had worked for chefs who made me eat things that I was like, oh, wow, this is pretty good. So I'd never really had any pickiness, probably because I was forced all that stuff I had to eat or lose out. But I grew up having Alex just eat whatever I cooked. I didn't force him to, but he just has a very open range of food, no matter what I cooked.
Good. Was there another one you were going to start eating?
Yeah, we ate at the table as a family for every meal, including breakfast and lunch on the weekends. Really no junk food in the house, dessert not often, never an abundance of food on the table, basically enough for serving one person.
One person had one serving, you mean?
Basically enough for serving, one serving per person, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
I can share too. Can I
Good,
share with
yeah.
Hi, I'm Jason. My mom would cook. She would get home like around 3 from work, and she would make a dinner. So it could be like pork chops and like a stovetop stuffing, or like one of those dried bag of rice-a-ronis or noodles or something like that. And then there would be enough for the 3 or 4 of us to eat. But if we didn't eat that, then we made a sandwich or something like that. It's weird because it was somewhat balanced, but it wasn't, there wasn't anything really strict about it, because if you didn't eat it, you didn't eat it. And then somebody ate it for leftovers,
Wow. So big changes between my generation and everyone else's. Mine and Joe's sound very familiar, and one other person. Yeah. So luckily they've gotten out of that habit of forcing kids to eat certain foods.
Well, I also think that maybe my home life affected it too, because when I was growing up, my parents were going through a pretty rough divorce. And so sometimes that whole meal project was not the priority in the house. We were all kind of doing our own things, and my mom was running around to wherever she had to run around to. So she usually made something every day though. But if she didn't, she didn't. And then we just ate whatever was in the fridge.
Yeah, so it wasn't a big deal. Food did not become a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's great. And some stories sound so different. you know, and that's a good thing because like it says there, kids are good at detecting pressure, you know, and they will struggle with you over it. Because you know, there's a saying about you can't force kids, you can control most things about kids except when they go to the bathroom, when they go to bed, and what they eat. So they will make it a big old struggle if you want it to be and they want it to be. So let me ask you guys this. What do you think is a good portion size for of mashed potatoes for a 2-year-old? Would you think it would be like half a cup, maybe a quarter of a cup, or maybe just a couple of tablespoons? What do you guys think?
Probably a few tablespoons.
Okay. Anybody else got a different answer? So true what you said, whoever said that. It's basically a tablespoon per year. So 2 tablespoons for a 2 years old. And then when they get to be about 5, they're probably eating about half of what we eat. And then it grows from there, depending on, you know, how big they are, how much activity they have. But in reality, you know, we're not giving them, a lot of people, I shouldn't say we all, I don't mean all of us, because it sounds like you guys have a different relationship with food. But what I see a lot of is, you know, that people are serving small children large amounts, and then they can't eat that. And that's where a lot of those food struggles might be starting too. And I want you to see this one video because I heard about this once and I thought this was really good. And I'm trying to find it here where the, give me a second here because I want to find the exact thing that I want to show you. So here it is. And so somebody give me a thumbs up if you can hear it.
Your toddler isn't eating
Thumbs
enough,
up.
or maybe you worry that they're eating too much. It's hard to always know, but in this video, I'm going to tell you exactly how to figure out how much food they need to be eating. For the best toddler nutrition and feeding advice from a registered dietitian, make sure to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell so you get notified with every new video. I often hear from moms a worry about their toddler eating way too much. They're like, they eat more than a grown man, or they're worried that their toddler isn't eating much at all. They're eating a couple bites a day or maybe skipping meals altogether. And after this video, you're going to have a clear understanding on portion sizes for toddlers and how much they need to eat. This approach to portion sizes that I'm sharing with you today has been successful for thousands of families, and you will be next. The first step is on knowing where to start. How much food do you even put out for your little one at a meal? And this is where we start to use something called starter portions. If you're plating your child's food, you want to start with something called the rule of thumb. This is your thumb, not their thumb. For each year of age of your child, you'll give them 1 tablespoon or 1 thumb's worth of each food that you're serving. So if you made chicken, rice, and green beans, you have a 1-year-old, then you're going to be giving them 1 thumb size of the chicken, 1 thumb of the rice, and 1 thumb of the green beans. However, this is important. This is not a representation of how much they should be eating. This is simply a starting place so you have an idea of what is a good amount to start them with. Your little one may want more or less than what you put out, and it's perfectly acceptable for them to have seconds or thirds of what you're offering. You see, they're born with this innate ability to know how much food their bodies need. As adults, we often lose the ability to tune into our internal cues and know actually if we're hungry or full. And that's a conversation for another day. But we want to make sure that our kids listen to those internal cues versus anything external. That means we're not saying you need to eat 1 more bite or no, that's too much. We're leaving it up to them to listen to what their body needs. This could mean that they don't eat a single bite at dinner some days. And that can be okay. Although I know it can be kind of nerve-wracking, and it doesn't mean that they don't like what you serve. It's actually very common for toddlers to eat heavier earlier in the day and then kind of taper off and not always have an appetite at dinner time. We like to think of that as like the best meal of the day, but for them, they've often already filled up on what their body needs and they don't have much room left at dinner. That's okay. On the flip side, maybe you're seeing them wanting seconds or thirds or fourths or fifths or whatever it is, and you don't know how much their body needs. So even if it looks like too much to us, they're such a tiny person. How could they need that much food? We actually don't know what their body is asking for. It's very uncommon for a toddler to eat past the point of fullness, get to an uncomfortable full, or eat too much. So it's really not your job to figure out how much they need. That's very much their job and can be in their control, and we can trust them with that. They are very capable of regulating how much they need. Comment below if you've ever seen big changes in your toddler's appetite, even from one day to the next. Now you have an understanding of portion sizes.
Okay. So I wanted you to see that because I had read somewhere what she's talking about, the fact that kids will not, it's uncommon for them to eat past the point of fullness. A long time ago on Dateline NBC, I saw a doctor talking about a study that they did where they had these these toddlers come in, 5 year, well, not toddler, like 5 years old, 4 years old, coming in, and they were going to feed them lunch. But before everybody ate, everyone, all the children were served like a Dixie cup full of this red liquid. And it just tasted like Kool-Aid, but some of it was high calorie liquid, some of it wasn't. And then they weighed the food after, and they did this repeatedly to see if there was a trend. And what they found was that the kids who were served a high calorie glass of Dixie cup full of liquid ate less food. So that's where they get this idea that kids have an internal clock that shuts off, tells them when they're too full, and they won't eat past that. But a lot of us, especially in my generation, have lost that ability because of that clean plate club. We don't know when we're full to the point where we should just stop, or, you know, when we're even hungry sometimes, you know, depending on what's going on in your family. So typically, kids should be offered, toddlers could be offered food every 2 or 3 hours, and older kids every 3 hours. And so you as the adult would make that decision, you know, what time scheduled times there are to eat, breakfast, lunch, dinner, a couple of snacks. But in between those times, like snacks and meals, don't offer anything except maybe water, because juice has those calories in it. Juice can be very filling. And because if they're drinking more juice, might not be eating enough of nutritious food. So, you know, that's one part of avoiding struggles, is thinking about how much they need. And, you know, how else do we avoid struggles with food? What other struggles could there be? And so one of the ways that we can do this is by, you know, avoiding these struggles is with setting routines and structures for kids. And so if we think about the structures that our kids have right now, you know, like what's their routine when they go to bed? We know that when they have that routine of, you know, taking a bath, maybe eating their snack, brushing their teeth, and then if your family prays, then they're going to say their little prayer and, you know, read a book and go to sleep, you know. And so kids look forward to that. They crave that. And so if you think about those routines, what happens when something interferes with that? How does your child react with that routine when that routine is broken? You know, can you guys answer that? Do you have a routine that like revolved around eating or going to bed or whatever? And what happens if that routine gets broken for some reason? Does anybody have an opinion or something they want to share?
Well, I can remember like when my kids were babies, when they were pretty little, and I had them like on a nap routine, and just like I'm talking like maybe 2, 3 years old or younger. And if I kind of like one day I was busy or out or something and we were off schedule, the kids were very crabby and they were just like miserable. And I mean, I guess as they get older, you don't see it, it's not as obvious, but it still affects them. But when they're like babies or toddlers, you can tell really it's very obvious when they're off schedule. And I still see it with my kids as they're older now, but it's just not as obvious.
Yeah, yeah. They need so much sleep when they're little. And I know kids with special needs too, they don't like to have their routines changed at all. That could really mess up their day and interfere with any success they have. Because in it at an early age, they just crave that predictability and those routines that we give them. And it gives them an idea of what's coming next. So there's that sense of control and security, when they know what's coming next. This is when we eat breakfast and lunch and dinner, and these are when I'm going to have my snack times. So just like that child that's not getting enough sleep, or somebody whose routine is slightly off when it comes to eating, that can show up in temper tantrums. Because if you are giving them juice in between meals, and then it comes time for everybody to sit down and they don't want to sit down and eat because now they've hit that button. Now they're full and they don't want to eat anything. Or they might eat one tablespoon of something and that button gets pushed and they're not hungry anymore. And then the structure is broken. Mom and dad are sitting there and all the siblings are eating and this one wants to get away from the table. That's going to cause all kinds of temper tantrums or just crying jags, and that's going to interfere. So that's one of the most important things when we're talking about these schedules. The feeding structure really belongs to the parents. When and where's the eating going to take place? The children's part of it is deciding how much they're going to eat and what they're going to eat when you set the food out, So giving them those structures too, when you can. It's not always easy to do that. You got to be flexible. But for them to know that when they eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and when they're going to get snacks, and then getting used to that as they grow, their body starts to adapt and they're going to start getting hungry at, predictable times in their schedule when they know dinner's coming up. And so it's not something that we have to be strict with as they get older, because then, other things in life start interfering, like sports and all that, and after school activities. But we can try to stick to it as much as we can once they get into that routine. And so we also want to have sit down meals. Like it would be wonderful if we could all sit down at all meals, like somebody just mentioned earlier, but that's not always possible. Sometimes you have to be able to make, you have to be a little bit more flexible if there's things going on, and you have to try to accommodate what's going on. But, even if you can only manage like breakfast together or dinner on Saturday and Sunday, that would be really nice. But, having those sit down meals in the same spot, everybody sitting down would be the best thing, preferably at the table. We don't want kids to get into the idea that they could just, everybody else is eating, but they could take something off the table and walk around with it and eat. That's really hard to break, that kind of a habit as they get older. And so, what we did in our house was I tried to stick to the schedule. If they took a bite and then stopped eating or they were messing around, I gave them a choice. You can get down if you want to, but you're done with your meal. You won't get anything else until the next scheduled meal, whether that's a snack, or something else, breakfast the next morning. But usually when they were little, it was a snack right before bed. And so you have to stick with that. You have to set those boundaries and then not cave 20 minutes later when everybody's done eating, you're washing the dishes and they come in and they want some ice cream, or something. They have to understand that there's boundaries. And if you're done, then you're going to get down. That's fine. But no more, food until the next scheduled snack or when we have our snack time, or you can stay and finish eating. I only use that if I could tell by looking at them that they were just trying to get down so they could play. You know, if I thought to myself that they weren't exhibiting that behavior, if they were just seemed like they were full or they said they were full, or I thought, oh man, this is going to turn into a struggle, I'm just letting them go. Because I set up the routine, I set up the food, and if they're not going to eat, then they get down and go. And I stuck with that and didn't try to force. A lot of people have said that, you know, I was never forced to eat. That's wonderful. That's just causing problems. So what do you guys think causes it to be difficult to stick to a routine? Is there anything that comes up that makes it more difficult for you?
I would say not necessarily for me, but my stepdaughter and her fiance are experiencing this with their little one is their work schedules. You know, she works, you know, his is more routine where he works during the day, but hers is she's with retail, so her hours are just whenever they schedule her. So that routine, because of work schedules, can be disruptive.
Yeah, yeah, that's hard. Work schedules, you know, but you had mentioned, Darren, that he's pretty flexible with his. So at least they have that, you know, dad can sit down with them and eat with them. And then maybe mom on the weekends if she's not working, because retail is, you know, their schedules can be different. My son works in retail. And so I understand how that routine is, but he doesn't have kids. So that makes it a little easier, you know, but I mean, that's what I mean about being flexible. You know, it'd be great if mom and dad and the kids could sit down and eat dinner together at the same time. But, you know, maybe their routine is just going to be, you know, that when we get a chance, whatever parent is home is going to sit down with the kids and eat and get them involved in helping to make it maybe. So, you know, there are obstacles, but if we like brainstorm with our kids, if they're old enough, with our partners, we can figure out how to make those work so that, you know, half the time, maybe over half the time, there's a routine that we can stick with. And so another thing that comes up that might cause some food struggles is using food to deal with emotions. And I see a lot of parents use food to prevent temper tantrums. You know, I've actually had through the years, many parents tell me that they don't like their kids to be uncomfortable. They don't like their kids to be upset about something. And so they'll use food to calm them down, a treat, a reward, a sucker, ice cream, something like that. And, you know, they just use food to make that stop. And so, you know, they don't realize that it's okay. You know, Joe talked about that. There's not good and bad feelings. There's just comfortable and uncomfortable. So if we could get kids to process how they feel with that reflective listening that we've mentioned so many times, getting them to talk about their feelings and then do something else to help them process, like, I don't know, go outside and play with their friends, or maybe, you know, talk to you, or if they're old enough, write things down. You know, it's okay to sit with those things for a while because that's how we deal with them. But I know for a lot of people, especially if they grew up in houses where, you know, it was not good to have those quote unquote bad feelings, or there might have been arguments or a lot of yelling and screaming, that can be hard for them. But the worst thing we can do is connect food and comfort. Because, you know, that was done to me too. You know, anytime we were upset, and I'll let Joe speak for himself, but, you know, in the ethnicity that I grew up in, anytime you were upset, it was bread or pasta, you know, and that's what caused that unhealthy weight gain. You know, back in the earlier part of this, 2000s for me, was that, you know, all those things coming together and causing problems with knowing when I was hungry and how to deal with emotions. Also avoiding distractions like, you know, technology. So, you know, when I first got divorced, about a year after I was divorced, I was dating somebody who had young kids. And, you know, he would often invite me over to have dinner and they would be playing with their phones. And so, you know, I was trying to get to know this family and they were, you know, eating while they were playing on their phones. One of them was watching TV in the other room. But, you know, the other bad thing about that, besides the family not talking, or at least him and his kids not talking, is that, you know, when you're watching something like that and eating, you don't really realize how much you're eating. The joy of eating is gone for you. That feeling of knowing when you should stop eating is being ignored because you're so busy with your mind someplace else that you're not paying attention to what you eat. So, you know, putting those things aside, we're the ones who pay for all this. We have a right to set up those boundaries. And yeah, are they going to be upset? Sure. But like I said, it's okay for them to feel upset. They can sit with it for a while. They can go out and play, get rid of those feelings. And then when they feel more calm, they can come and eat dinner with us. So we need to really make sure that those things like TV and games and phones are off the table and somewhere else. So before I go into the next section, I want to ask you guys, what would you do in this situation? So a family's having dinner. They sit down with lasagna, green beans, peaches, and bread for dinner. The child takes one bite of lasagna and says they don't like it. And then for the rest of the meal, they only want to eat peaches and bread. What would you do in this situation?
I got an answer.
Sure.
You too. I'll go after you, Jason.
Okay, I'd let them eat peaches and bread. Like, I'm not going to answer, you know what I mean? I don't want to come up with an answer that you want to hear. I make the peaches and bread, and I'll make a plate of pizza rolls if that's the case. Unfortunately, that's probably exactly what I'd do.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jason.
Yeah.
That was brave of you.
Yeah.
What I would do is, because I have 4 kids and this has happened multiple times to me, I would let the lasagna go with the one bite. I would let them eat peaches and bread, but I wouldn't let them have seconds of peaches and bread. I would let them have their serving and then say, if you're still hungry, go back to the lasagna, and I would leave it at that. And they would not get anything else from that's not on the table.
Oh, okay.
I'm in the same
That's nice,
camp as
Susan.
Jason. You know, my wife, her previous marriage with her kids when they were growing up, her daughter only wanted to eat macaroni and cheese. It didn't matter what else was served. That's all she wanted. And she was worried about that. And the doctor's like, look, if that's what she wants, let her eat it. She's eating. So, you know, and that's the way I approach it. I mean, if they don't want lasagna that day, fine. They don't want lasagna. Let them have the bread and peaches. If they're eating something with nutritional value, let them have it.
Great. Anybody else want to add in?
So what's
Anything
the right answer though?
Well, I'm getting to that. And you know what, Jason, I would partially agree with you. I wouldn't make a fight over it either. Okay, fine. You got peaches and bread for dinner tonight. I'm not sure I'd go and make them something different, but I would say, go ahead, you know, have your peaches and bread, just like both of you guys, all 3 of you actually said the same thing. You know, and my point is that, you know, you don't want to make a fight over food. And you also don't want to create the picky eater, because that's actually what we're doing when we start making these struggles over food. And, you know, just so that we all understand, I didn't know this first bullet point, that children are not born with all the taste buds they're ever going to have. So they may not like something now, but they may start to like it later. So maybe lasagna for them will taste better in a couple of years. But if we try to force them to eat it now, you're just making it maybe a food that they will never touch, ever, you know?
I'm not going to force them to eat it. It just saves more lasagna for me.
Right? I hear you. Yes. I can relate to that one, Darren, especially as an Italian girl. I can totally relate to that. But with really young kids, you know, like I said, when they're starting to form those ideas about food, you know, if you guys remember when I went through ages and stages, I talked about the fact that when they're about 2 years old, or, you know, even 1 year old, actually, they're trying to figure out the world around them. And so not everything is going to be pleasing to them. We have to be able to expose them to those foods about 8 or 10 times so that they can get used to it, because, you know, they may look at it and not want to touch it because, you know, they're not sure about the way it smells or the way it feels or the way it touches. And then they might want to play with it, especially if they're little. they might want to play with it, not to be bad kids, but because of the fact that that sensory integration thing is all going on inside their brains. And so they may feel it and think it's slimy. Lasagna noodles are slimy. I don't like that, because they've only been exposed to it once so far. So maybe they might play with it and then put it aside and not want to taste it. Then when you try to serve it again, they might put it in their mouth to see really how slimy is it. It's not that bad, but I don't like, the sauce on it. And so they're not used to that. And they may take it out. We're talking about little kids, 1 year old. And then eventually they're going to get to the point where they'll eat it, but that'll come even later. They might try it once and then not want to have another spoonful. And so it's a process when they're really little, because there's that sensory integration. They're trying to understand what's sticky, what's mushy, what's slimy, what is salty and sweet, and what is all that, and have it, be able to send those information to their brain so that they can process it and see if they like it. But 8 to 10 times, I wish somebody would have told me that a long time ago. But the most that I got when Luke was little, I started taking those parenting classes, was exactly that. Because I said, Lucas is making this big thing out of food. He was like a toddler when I started taking those parenting classes. And we would always get a fight about how much food he was eating or on his plate during dinner. So the ladies at the care office, when I was talking to them about it, they said, listen, step down from that. Let them make some choices. You're making the decision about where the food is, and at the table, when you're eating at dinner time. Let him put the food on his plate. Let him eat it, and don't fight with him if he doesn't finish his plate. So, Luke took a piece of meat about that big. And then he took a huge amount of salad, which still to this day is his favorite thing, salad. Huge amount of macaroni and cheese or whatever else it is that we had to eat. And, he was giving me the side eye to see if I was going to fight about it. And I didn't. I was too busy eating mine. And eventually it all worked itself out. He started to, try things because we weren't fighting over it. And, eating less of macaroni and cheese, maybe a little bit more bread. But during all that time in between, when he was still trying to figure it out, when his snack time came up, I just made sure he had cheese or yogurt or some other kind of protein substitute. My kids always like chickpeas. And so I would give them chickpeas too. They love those. We used to call them bird brains. I don't know why, but my kids were fascinated with them because they were soft and they would eat that. And so they were getting the protein that they needed, and all the fighting stopped. Wasn't necessary anymore. So kids may not eat the exact amount suggested every day. So it doesn't matter. You can spread it out over the week. Just make sure that they get enough protein, enough fruits and vegetables. And so what if they don't eat a full dinner? Probably in the morning, they're going to be more hungry and they'll want to eat more. Remember, she said kids tend to eat more in the morning and less at night. And then always offer them a variety of food. So you might want to offer them something they've never had before and offer it with something that they like. Like if they have never tried broccoli, put it next to or cut it up inside of maybe their macaroni and cheese if they love that. And so they might be more willing to try it if they're doing it. And, watching you also sit down and eat those foods without making a big power struggle over it. And then also, let them help prepare the meals with you. Even young kids can help out as long as you're supervising them and watching what they're doing. And there's always those ideas of the forbidden food, and what I'm reading, or the ideas that I have here, come from a curriculum that CARE uses, that's offered by United Way of Southeastern Michigan. They partnered with, or not partnered with, but used the ideas of Ellen Sattery. I think that's her last name. I've got it in here in a different spot. But she talks about forbidden foods, offering them those forbidden foods. and making sure that they have enough of it to eat. You know, and I thought this was interesting, when dessert's on the menu, serve it with the meal and allow them to choose when to eat it. Maybe they want to eat it first, even if it is dessert, that's okay, you know, because one of the things, these 2 bullet points I thought were very important. If they're only offered after a meal, kids may end up overeating twice. You know, once when they're trying to get to that dessert that they know they love, and then once they have the dessert, they might, if they're already full from their meal, you know, they may overeat by eating too much dessert because they want it so badly. And it was that thing that they couldn't have until they cleaned their plate off. You know, they also talk about in that model, that healthy eating model of feast, that you let them have as much of it as they want. And, you know, they might eat a lot of it at first, but eventually when they realize that that food is not forbidden, or something that I'm only going to eat once in a while, they start to learn how to balance it. It's not so much that I have to, you know, have so much of it when I do get my hands on it. So it becomes more balanced for them to eat. And then again, they talk about not using that food as a bribe to get them to behave better. And, you know, that's that emotional eating, that manipulation too of rewards and punishments, taking away something they really like. I'm taking away all your desserts if you don't behave properly. That's also that manipulation. And those are where the food struggles start and continue the rest of their life. But it sounds like a lot of you guys have already kind of figured that one out. It sounds like you're already saying there's not going to be food struggles for you over what they eat and how much of it they eat. And so that last point there is about, you know, since you are the adult, you're deciding, you know, when to eat and what they're eating, or not what they're eating, but, you know, what you're serving. You may decide that forbidden fruits, like certain foods, like French fries and potato chips and cake and ice cream, aren't going to be offered in your house. And that's great, you know, because you are the one deciding what the family atmosphere is about food. Maybe you're vegetarian, or maybe you just don't like sugar, you know. So that's fine. But when they go somewhere where there's going to be some of those forbidden foods, like a party, a birthday party, or a party at school, you know, just don't label it a bad food, or give them a negative reaction about that, because then, you know, it'll become something that they have to have all the time. And there's another power struggle to get into, which we don't want to do with our food. So an idea there about for those forbidden foods that everybody is so nervous about their kids having, because you know what, they're going to eat it anyway. They might not eat it in front of you, but they're probably going to eat it at their friend's house or at a party. So you know, might as well teach them some balance about those types of food. And then, you know, if we're talking about this idea of obesity in children being like 14 million kids affected by it, we have to start thinking about reducing those sedentary activities, like technology, or revolved around technology, and start getting them outside or even inside doing certain things that's going to keep them actively moving. So let's go to the second video that I want you to see here about, okay, hold on, I'm going to fix something here. Okay.
Welcome to this session on physical activity for children ages 6 to 12, presented by Middle Childhood Matters Coalition Toronto. In this session, you'll learn the importance of regular physical activity for your child, how much physical activity your child needs, and how to get your child moving. Let's get started. Why is physical activity important for your child? Regular physical activity helps to improve your child's mental and physical health, coordination and skill development, academic performance and mental processes, and social skills. On the other hand, not enough activity can have negative effects on your child, such as obesity, high blood pressure, poor attention or school performance, and poor self-image. There are 4 different levels of physical activity. Sedentary activities involve long periods of sitting and generally use very little energy, like reading, watching TV, or sitting at the computer. Light physical activities get you moving and require a bit more energy, like making the bed, stretching, or walking slowly. Moderate physical activities make you breathe harder and your heart beat faster, such as walking uphill, bike riding, or playground activities. Vigorous physical activities have you breathing heavily and your heart racing, like running, swimming, or playing soccer. Your child needs 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity every day, and vigorous activities at least 3 times per week. Some activities also help your child to strengthen their muscles and bones, such as hopscotch, jump rope, gymnastics, push-ups, climbing ropes or trees, running, and dancing. Do some of these 3 times per week too. Here are some tips to how to get your child moving. Encourage more self-directed play and less video games, computer, and TV time. Assign household duties like washing dishes, vacuuming, shoveling the snow, or raking leaves outside. Take the long route. Use the stairs rather than escalators or elevators. When using public transit, get off one stop earlier and walk the rest of the way. And whenever possible, go outdoors to play. Visit your local parks, skating rinks, or public swimming pools and baseball diamonds. Remember, the more physically active your child is, the better.
Okay. Any thoughts about that? Do you guys find it difficult or pretty easy to get your kids outside and playing, or even not outside, but just doing something? What, Jason?
I think the biggest thing with that is having somebody else to do it with. No kid just for fun is going to go outside and jump rope for 45 minutes. I mean, some might, the ones that are destined for jump roping in the Olympics. But so I think the biggest obstacle in students being active these days is not technology. It's more of having somebody to do it with.
Yeah, sure enough.
Mm-hmm. I think technology affects it, but I think that, in fact, I'm just going from my own experience in raising my son. If he was part in a subdivision where there was 3 or 4 kids down the street or whatever, he would have been outside playing basketball all day long. You can only shoot hoops by yourself for so long, you know?
Right. You know, a few years ago, part of my responsibility at CARE is to coordinate a parenting conference that we have in March. And I think it was 2014 or 2015, I had these 2 professors from Michigan State University. Scott Becker was his name. I can't remember what her name was, but they were both keynotes. And they talked about the changes that are happening to children, not only their brain changes, but also their physical changes when they are exposed too early to technology. You know, one of the things that they talked about with brain changes was that kids exposed too early and too long to technology were getting addicted to it. And what they said about the physical changes is that children were, their body, their core strength was weaker now than it was, you know, maybe 10 years, 15 years ago, because they're sitting an awful lot in a chair or in front of their TV or in front of technology, just really doing nothing. And they also said that their nearsightedness was also being affected because they were looking at technology right in front of them. They weren't looking those long distances, you know, like I would have if I was a child, you know, and had spent so much time outside and looking for kids, you know, in the next yard or playing kickball, that type of thing. And so, you know, technology is making a little bit of a change, and also just making it fun for them to be able to go out, like Jason's saying. There's so many things that they can do now besides extracurricular sports. Joe mentioned to me one time that over where he lives, there's a park that has like an obstacle course set up. And that's basically what outside playgrounds are at school anyways, obstacle courses. So they, you know, little ones don't really have to do any kind of real, you know, jumping rope for 45 minutes. They can just do that by getting outside and playing, you know, giving them, taking them on walks and getting them involved in things that are just the opposite of technology. And so part of the way that we can do it is to be a good role model about that. You know, we've always had dogs, and my kids will see me walk my dog every single day, unless the rain or the snow is going horizontally, then I won't do it. But if they're, you know, if it's lightly raining outside, so what? We're gonna keep the dogs anyway because they don't care. So that was just part of the atmosphere in our house, is that we always had a dog. We always had to walk it every day to make sure it got exercise. And then it got us to exercise too, you know, and then not always just driving them around. You know, in our neighborhood, it was close enough, the kids were close enough where they could just walk over to the school and play on the playground there, you know, with their friends. I wouldn't let them go alone, but I'd have them go with their friends. My kids didn't like after school sports. None of them liked it. So, you know, I got them to do other things. Luke was always out and about, but my daughter didn't want to do anything. And I found her laying most of the time on the couch watching TV. And I was like, Leah, you have a choice. Either think of something that you want to do, some kind of group thing you want to get involved in and get some exercise and have some fun, or I'll choose it. You decide. So that helped her a lot, you know. She still didn't choose anything, so I chose dance for her to get her interested in it. And then, you know, brainstorm with them. What can we do as a family to have fun? You know, what would we like to do? You know, can we check out a park with a trail on it, or can we find one of those parks that have all those obstacles that we can work out with? And then teach them about good, you know, limit their technology and teach them about how to prepare healthy foods, what's healthy, what's not, help them learn that balance with their food. And, you know, and ask them to do those simple things that people just don't do anymore. You know, like walking over to your friend's house. My old coworker a few years ago told me that her teenager was texting her from upstairs. Mom, when are we having dinner? So my friend Vita would not answer her. You know, she saw the messages. So her daughter had to walk downstairs, oh no, and talk to her mother. You know, and she said, I don't answer texts in our house, you know, and that type of thing. I know that's in the home, but I would encourage them to go out and find their friends and talk to them rather than doing it with their phone. They're down the street. You know, take your bike and go over to your friend's house. Let's go on a walk after dinner. Let's make it a habit of always doing that, because that's going to help your food to digest anyway. And so at the end of the day, you know, it's just about following those divisions of responsibility that I talked about just a little bit, but they do talk about in that feast model that we use. You know, you're the one who decides when and what's going to be served. Your kids are the ones who decide, you know, how much of it they eat and what they want to eat that you've served. so that they can feel good about what they're eating and sitting down with their family. And they will also learn good habits, behavioral habits, like not looking at technology, like looking people in the eye when you're talking to them, talking about your day, what's going on, with your family and in the world. And also to help them learn that balance of what's good, and how much of those sweets and fried and salty foods can we have, and how much makes you feel full, and getting used to drinking water, or water with fruit in it rather than always reaching for pop and those sugary drinks. And so here's a few resources. That woman's name is Ellen Satter. That's who developed that Ellen Satter Institute, where we got the model for FEAST, which is feeding, eating, and succeeding together. It's an educational series for parents. We used to do it at CARE, but then we didn't have as much participation, so we had to stop. But we do use it in presentations like this because it's a healthy way to learn how to have a good relationship with food. And so there's a few websites that you can read about it, and a couple of books that Ellen Satter wrote, and also that Jill Castle and Marianne Jacobson wrote. That's all goes right along with that FEAST model for healthy eating. And so any questions or thoughts that you guys might have or about what we talked about today? Yes, Jason?
I just wondered if you had a time machine to take me back 16 years so I could know that about the trying the foods 10 times, because I mentioned the thing about making the pizza rolls or whatever. I was just being honest. I don't think it's a great idea. I wish that that I had gotten my son to try a few more things, and not even just vegetables, just other types of even meats that he never tried, or seafood,
Yeah. I don't think it's wrong, Jason. That's not the impression I was trying to give you about, making something else. That was just my rule at my house.
Mhm.
What's at the table is what we have to eat. But that doesn't work for every family,
Yeah,
And so for you that worked, and that's good. It doesn't sound like your family has issues with sitting down and eating, healthy food. So worst thing is trying to force them to eat that lasagna. That would have been different, So thank you for your input. That's really good. Anyone else got any thoughts or ideas? Questions?
It reminds me of the Mommy Dearest movie
Yeah.
with that raw piece of meat. She had that raw prime rib.
What was that? All I remember is the wire hanker, Joe. What was the raw piece of meat?
Well, she had a raw piece of prime rib or something for dinner. She didn't want it. So she saved it for breakfast the next day. She didn't want it. So she saved it for lunch the next day. She kept on serving this raw piece of, well, not raw, but, medium rare piece of steak. And she would just, whatever that girl was hungry, she brought out that medium rare piece of steak. And it was just a big power struggle.
That bad boy wouldn't have lasted 3 minutes.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I don't even remember that, Joe, but maybe I blocked it out of my head. I'm such a foodie.
Yeah, but I have 13 nieces and nephews, and almost all of them are so picky. If they see a color, a speck, if they see a tomato, it was just so hard. And me as a chef, I cook, they come to dinner. And I always say, if you don't like what's for dinner, I used to say, I have some saltine crackers and some water if you want. But I wouldn't prepare a second meal for them. And they are still such picky eaters. And it's really frustrating.
Yeah.
Because we were all raised with really strict, you eat it and not getting up until you eat it. And that really creates those phobias really for food.
Well, my father was kind of that older generation where the parents were like, you eat it or whatever. But he was one of 11 kids. And there was that, my grandfather was a farmer in Kentucky. So there was so many of them eating that there was only so much food available. If they didn't eat, they went hungry. So they got to where they would, just whatever was in front of them, whether they liked it or not, they ate it.
Yeah.
That was it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I didn't even grow up, Darren, in the Depression, but, my parents did. And, but they instilled that fear. That's why I used to eat what was left over on their plate. And for the day that I decided after, going to Weight Watchers, that I was actually going to throw that food away, that was so hard for me to do. And I didn't even grow up in the Depression, but that taught me that I had to, change the way I looked at food and not teach my children that, which luckily, they don't have that problem with that I did. And I don't really even have it anymore, except I still have that emotional thing. I think that's just an Italian thing, is that you reach for pasta or bread or something, when you're sad. And I have to really fight that so I don't do it anymore.
Something you brought up, Teresa, I started gaining weight. I was always thin and active. When I had my son, I would finish the food that he didn't finish. I'd eat all of his pizza crust. So I eat pizza myself, but then I eat, 2 slices of pizza crust from him. He didn't finish his fries. I ate my meal and finished his fries. So I never threw out food. And that's when I started gaining weight, when I had that, school age child that didn't finish the food.
Yep. I don't think that this generation's getting that though. Thank goodness.
To this day, my son won't finish his food. He's 30 years old. He will leave 1 bite of food on his plate.
Why?
You can't finish that 1 bite of food. I mean, he's a grown man, and he will always leave a little bit of food, maybe a few French fries or a mashed potato stack, or even the meat. He'll eat a hamburger and leave like 2 bites of hamburger left on his plate, and he will not eat it.
It sounds like that doesn't have much to do with the food. It has more to do with some psychological thing. Like that's kind of how he's wired,
Yeah.
He just wants to leave that.
His dad has a big red button on his forehead that says, I don't like when Alex does this. And so he's so used to pressing that button on Joe's head that he can't let it go. He can't stop doing that. Why is it so important to you that he eats that bite? Why can't you just let it go?
Maybe it was revenge. He wanted me to get fat. So he would always leave food because he knew Dad would eat it, and then he can tease me for being overweight.
Oh my gosh.
No,
let it go, Joe. Let it go.
Yeah, I don't finish it anymore. I mean, if I could finish it, I'll finish it. If not, I just cringe and he throws it away.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't figure that one out.
Yeah.
Okay, I can give you a little insight. I do that sometimes with chicken, and I don't like a lot of meat. I get grossed out when I think about it. So I'll eat chicken like maybe once or twice a week, and that's all I can handle. And a lot of times I'll eat like the chicken, but then towards the last bite or two, I feel like I don't want to, maybe it is grossed out. I don't know what it is, but I just think about what I'm eating and I just leave those last couple of bites when it's meat. So, I mean, I don't know about the other foods, but I do that with chicken for sure. And that's mainly the only meat I eat, and I do that.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Thank you.
Yes, I get that, Olivia. I'm a vegetarian. Meat grosses me out too.
Yeah, it's funny though, because I don't want to be a vegetarian. So I don't want to think about it, because like I enjoy certain things. So I don't want to, but then if I think about it, it's hard for me to eat it. So I try my best not to. That's what I'm saying. Like towards the end, I'm always like, okay, I can't, like, I got to just leave that last bite or two.
Mm-hmm. There's all kinds of reasons, Joe, why he might be doing that. Maybe he's just full.
Yeah, maybe he just had his limit and that's it. He can't eat no more and he doesn't need to.
Yeah, he's very slim, your son.
Yeah.
And I think that he just doesn't require that much food,
Yeah. It's just the way I was raised.
I grew up around too many hillbillies. If it crawls, creeps, or moves around in the woods, I probably eat it.
Mm-hmm.
Hey guys, I would enjoy a future session if you guys do anything. I have 2 teenage boys, and seriously, they love to eat a lot. And I don't like, I don't know how, like, I don't know, like if there are tips for teenagers, especially the boys, that would be great for the future, because I like cringe. It's not like I don't really overeat, and I've never encouraged them to overeat. And I have one that's like super skinny and he eats a lot, and one that's like, he likes to eat. He's more average, but still, I'm like, these boys eat a lot. And people usually say, oh, teenage boys love to eat, and they do. But I mean, it's hard to draw the line sometimes.
Well, you know what? That's putting you in charge of what they're eating. It sounds like they have a good handle on it. My daughter's the same way, Olivia. She weighs all of 110 pounds dripping wet. And that girl tucks in. she knows how to sit down and eat. She's constantly eating. And I don't know where she puts it. But I think that that's just what keeps her, she's 29, so it's not my business in the first place. But, it's just her ability to take in that energy that she needs for what she's doing. And if your sons don't seem like they have a problem with their, if they look healthy and they're being healthy, maybe it is time to just step away and like that feast model talks about, they might just shut down when they've had enough. They'll stop, because you said you didn't really pressure them to eat. So they're just eating their requirement that they need, and they probably need more if they're doing stuff.
It's just weird to me because I can't even imagine needing to eat that much. So I'm just like, that's crazy. How do you guys eat so much? Like way more than I do.
I know. I don't get it either. I look at Leah and if I look at spaghetti, I'll gain 10 pounds just by looking at it or thinking about ice cream. And she just wolfed that stuff down. And well, she's a vegetarian too, but she'll just eat constantly all day long, a lot of food. And I still look at her, where does it go? I don't understand that. But I think it's the fact that she's, 29 and I'm 60. So her metabolism's a lot faster and she can just burn stuff. She's probably burning while she's eating it, whereas me, I don't have that ability anymore. So, that's where the mystery comes in.
Speaking from the point of view of one of those former teenage boys that ate a lot, that's a point in time, especially if they're involved in any kind of athletics at school or anything, they're putting on a lot of muscle mass. And that muscle mass burns a lot of calories. So that's where it comes from. It's not necessarily that they're eating, that it's not healthy for them to eat that much. It's just they need that much to be able to build that muscle that they're building.
And you're right. I noticed after soccer, oh gosh, the kid can eat and they are growing like weeds. Like they're just getting so tall and it just blows my mind though. I'm like, how can you it's just crazy to me. I cringe because I can't believe I could never eat that much, but I don't know. My husband just says they're growing boys, just leave it. And but it kind of drives me crazy. I can't keep up with them.
When I was playing football, my father, instead of my mom cooking anything for dinner, my father would just take me and one of my friends to the all-you-can-eat place. It was cheaper for him to pay $6 and let us eat all we wanted than it was to try and feed us the same amount at home. So that's what we did.
Absolutely.
Yep. I think that's spot on, Darren. I think he's got it right there. That's what's going on. It's funny.
Yeah, it's just crazy.
We can just try to have them pay for the grocery bill and see if they spend much.
That would be good. That would be a good one. I mean, sometimes I'm like, these boys eat like horses, and I don't get it, but I just I think I'm still learning how to navigate. I mean, one is almost 16 and one is 13, but I'm just like, it's crazy to me, but I think maybe it'll level out later.
Oh, I know it will. I know it will. Yeah.
That 16-year-old is going to start eating more, by the way.
Oh, Lord. I mean, I get embarrassed when I go grocery shopping sometimes because it's not like I'm a huge person or anything, but I have so many groceries and I'm like, I have teenage kids.
She just makes an announcement when she walks in there. I have teenagers.
Me and my wife, between the two of us, have 7 kids from previous marriages. I had 4, she had 3. And when we got together, the oldest one was 11, the youngest one was 2. And we went through the teenage years with all of them, 4 of them being boys.
Oh, gosh.
So I know all about that big grocery bill.
Yep.
I have something that I wanted to know more about was listening to children's food sensitivities when they're young, because one of the things that I had to grow up with was I didn't know until I was in middle school that I was lactose intolerant, and I would be sent to the nurse's office nearly every day of the week because I thought I was going to throw up because I had a very severe case of it, and I was diagnosed for acid reflux and all these other things. And then they finally said, you can't have dairy. And my mom, her Michigan solution was drink some ginger ale whenever my stomach made gurgly noises. And she's like, oh, you must be hungry. or, oh, you're got an upset stomach. So she'd either one, give me something else to eat, or two, she would give me ginger ale. So I started learning very early on that when my stomach hurt because of something I was eating, the solution was eat something else to settle your stomach or drink some sugary pop. And it wasn't until college that I actually learned not to do that all the time.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I
That's
know what you mean about that lactose intolerance. I have that too. That's painful.
Yeah.
But yeah, see how that goes on in a
Mhm.
family, you know?
Yep.
Were you going to say something, Joe? I feel like I
No, I
cut
was
you
going to
off.
say that message she had, and if she didn't
Yeah.
learn that herself, you know, when she had children, she'd say the same thing. Oh, you have a tummy ache? Here, eat something else and drink this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. It's true.
All right, folks.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Joining, we're going to wrap this up, and
Okay.
we'll see you all on Thursday, where we will be talking about dealing with the explosive child.
Okay.
Sounds
Thank
great.
you guys so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, Darren.
Thank you so much.
Bye, Missy. Okay, I will see you guys on Thursday. I got a meeting that I have to go to right quick. Great presentation. Got a lot
you.
of participation on this one, you guys.
Yeah. That's great.
A lot of great insight.
Okay,
All right,
thanks,
Tony. See you Thursday.
Thursday.
Yep.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye
Bye.
now.